I've actually been working on this for quite some time. This was a really difficult list for me to do. I'm a huge fan of instrumental music, and I'm especially a huge fan of pop instrumentals. And so there have been so many over the years that making a list of them was difficult. Um, and then ranking them nearly killed me. But that's what we're going to do. A few rules in place while we're doing it. I'll explain those in a minute. But right now, this show is all about my top 30 favorite top pop instrumentals. I'm TC Kirkham of the Kirkham Report. Let's rank this. Hey, all out there in VC land, I'm TC Kirkham, the Kirkham Report. Welcome to Rank This. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. I'm a huge instrumentals fan. I've talked about how I love beautiful music, how I grew up with it. My mom always had, the easy listening, beautiful music stations on in the background. This doesn't pertain to that so much as it does pop stuff. I'm always a sucker for pop instrumentals when they're really well done. This one was really difficult to do. I had to make sure I didn't have anything on here twice. And there's so many more I had to leave off, which nearly killed me. What I did in ranking my top 30 pop instrumentals was I, first off, had to look at the charts. If it didn't chart on either the Billboard Hot 100 or the Billboard Easy Listening / Adult Contemporary / Adult Songs chart, it wasn't considered. These are chart hits. So that made it a little easier. I'm going to do an all new age and all smooth jazz ones of these eventually. But for this one, it was really difficult because I like so much, and there's so many different styles of instrumentals out there. They're slow and soft. There's a lot from the 50s and 60s, a lot more modern stuff that most people don't remember. They had to be true instrumentals. Now, what I mean by that, they could have background vocals in places, but no real vocals and no disco instrumentals. So you won't see Fly Robin Fly, Tangerine, anything that's part orchestral and part vocal on here, even though many people consider Silver Convention stuff to be instrumental because they only have like 6 words each song. I don't consider those instrumentals. Those are disco songs, and I'm not going to count those. There are a lot of good stuff I left off, but these are the favorites I could come up with. I was torn on a few of them. So when this is all said and done, there will be playlists up so you can take a listen to all the songs. There'll be a YouTube playlist and a Spotify playlist. And check them out and see what you think. Very few artists on here actually have multiple entries. There's one that has 3. They were all 3 hits. Other than that, I think everybody has just got a single title on here. I'm just looking up the list. One did have 2, but I took one of them off in favor of something else. So, here we go. These are the songs you should easily remember. All of these were big hits, or fairly big hits, except one, and that one is so ingrained into people from television that it's not funny. So, here we go. Let's kick it off at number 30. My 30 most popular, my favorite instrumental of all time is a movie song. Not surprisingly, a lot of these come from movies. It was a movie I saw when I was way too young, and I didn't get because it was the drive-in with my mom and stepdad. I didn't really pay attention to the movie, and some of it freaked me out, what I did see. So I didn't ever see it again, and I haven't since then, although I like the director. One of his later films is one of my all-time favorite films. Number 30, Eric Weisberg and Dueling Banjos from Deliverance. Simple, wonderful, pop and country crossover as well as AC. Um, Banjo had never prominently played a part in a top 40 hit before. Here it did, and the banjo is an unfairly maligned instrument. Country music fans are used to hearing it all the time. You see it on Hee Haw and all the country music channels shows that were out there. But dueling banjos is just something that everybody remembers because it's so catchy. And it was billed to Eric Weisberg. It was actually billed to Deliverance when it first came out. Um, it's a great little song and deserved to be the hit that it was, even though the movie was. That movie freaked me out. I don't ever want to see it again. Number 30, Dueling Banjos, Eric Weisberg / Deliverance. I've forgotten who the other artist was, and I'm sorry. It's not listed on the label. Number 29, known from television, it was also a pop and easy listening hit in the early 1960s, but it's best known, and even now, it's often being put to chase sequences from other shows on YouTube, and you see it all the time. Number 29, Yakety Sax by Boots Randolph. It's perhaps best known as Benny Hill chase music. The Benny Hill show used it in practically everything in the 60s and 70s. And it's a catchy tune. It's been done as Yakety Axe also by Chet Atkins, which is also really good. And one of the funniest things I ever saw, actually, and the first time I ever saw it used that way, there was this show on the Cartoon Network in the late 90s, early 2000s called Time Squad, and they were this team of people that went around fixing history, and one of them was Roosevelt and Churchill. And at the end of the episode, they were all fighting, and they started playing Yakety Sax as they were all running around. Kim and I were on the floor because we'd never, they were obviously thinking of an homage to Benny Hill. It was at the very end of the cartoon. And it was funny, and that song has always been a favorite because my mother loved Boots Randolph. She had a number of his albums, played him all the time, and it's a favorite of mine too. Number 29, Yakety Sax by Boots Randolph. Number 28, I just played on TC's Daily Obscuria a few weeks ago. It's a great song. It was originally written for the 1980 Winter Olympics, and I always liked this song better than his bigger hit. As a result, that bigger hit didn't make my list. It's on the also-rans. And I always thought that he got the shaft because he wasn't as well known with pop fans as he was with jazz fans. He deserved more pop success than he got. Number 28, Give It All You Got, theme from the 1980 Winter Olympics by Chuck Mangione. Chuck doesn't play the trumpet, he plays the flugelhorn, which is a halfway between a trumpet and a tuba. And it does sound similar to a trumpet. It has that same sound. But I love this song because Give It All You Got also has incredible sax work, incredible keyboards. It mixes everything together. And as much as I love Feel So Good, which was Chuck's top 5 hit from the spring of 1978, Give It All You Got was always a better song to me. It really connected with me. I don't quite know why, but it did. I always loved it, and I think it deserves better. So go back and check it on Obscuria if you haven't heard it, because it's a great song, and that's the album version on there, too. Number 28, Give It All You Got, Chuck Mangione. At number 27, this song has gone through 3 different themes over the years. It was first known as Cotton's Dream when it was originally released, and it was from the soundtrack of Bless the Beast and Children, the 1971 movie. I hadn't heard it at that time. In 1973, it was adopted as the theme from The Young and the Restless, the daytime drama series on I'll get it right, CBS. But it became nationally known in 1976 when it was used as the gymnastics music for Nadia Comaneci at the 76 Olympics. And so when it was issued on a single that year, it was called Nadia's Theme with The Young and the Restless in parentheses. No mention of Cotton's Dream at all. Barry DeVorazone and Perry Bodkin Jr. had a top 5 hit with the song. after Nadia Comaneci's use of it. It's still, to this day, used as the theme from The Young and the Restless. Um, it's a great, very majestic song. I don't remember who does it, but I have a great heavy metal guitar version of that song, which starts with piano and then the rest of it's done with guitar and piano. It's fabulous. I don't remember who did it, but it was terrific. Um, Most people think of Nadia Comaneci when they hear that song because Nadia's theme was the release, name of the release that A&M Records used when it came out on a single in 1976. And like I said, it was a top 5 hit for them. Number 27, Barry DeVorazone and Perry Bodkin Jr. with a piece they originally wrote for Bless the Beast and Children 5 years earlier. A song that became popularly known as Nadia's theme. Number 26, we go way back to the 1960s. I'm going to grab a drink here. This is another one I have a terrific disco remake of. I mean, it wasn't a remake, it was actually a remix of the original song. Done, I think it was done in the 2000s by another act from his neck of the woods up in the Nordic countries. Number 26, Alley Cat by Bent Fabric. Very simple tune. Everybody knows the song. Yeah, I mean, it's been used in countless TV shows, countless movies, commercials even. It's a great song. The disco dance version is terrific because they take the original riff of the song from I believe it was out in 1960, the original 1960 release, and puts a background underneath it, a dance background. It's really well done. And I'm sorry I don't remember the DJ that did it, but it's really fantastic. If I find any of these, I'll go through and put notes in my show for it. Ben Fabric has just recently passed away. I think last year. I think. Let me double check that real quick while I'm talking. But it's he was an amazing artist and did a lot of stuff over the years. And 2020. From Denmark and did some great stuff. He lived a long life, passing away in 2000 at the age of 95. And I was glad to see that he lived to see the dance club. Does it say here? I'm just looking really quick. Blah, blah, blah. He was also deeply involved in that remix that was done in sometime in the 2000s. I just liked his style, and he had some great stuff, and some of his other stuff is really good too. If you're not familiar with his stuff, you should go back and check it out because he's an excellent pianist and musician, terrific all the way around. Number 26, Alley Cat by Bent Fabric. Number 25, I initially had this song higher, and then I had so much other stuff I hadn't thought of that it eventually fell to number 25. Because I love this song. I also played this on one of my instrumentals weeks on Obscuria last year. It was the first song I'd ever really found that introduced me to the sounds of the Caribbean. Now, I knew Caribbean music from other stuff, but this was the first one to ever have a hit with it. And ironically, all the guys that did it are from Ohio. I think they were based at Akron or Worcester, so one of the colleges up there when they first got together. Number 25, Morning Dance by Spyro Gyra. This was their breakthrough hit. They've been around ever since in some form or another. In 1979, it became a big hit on the pop chart and on the AC chart. It was a modest hit on the pop chart. It was a top 5 hit on the AC chart. And with what I don't know if it's a steel drum or a marimba that they have that is played in the actual song. But, I mean, everybody knows it. Morning Dance is one of those songs that's been used on countless news programs, sports programs, awards programs over the years as background music. It's really fantastic, and it is has that, especially if the show has something to do with islands or the Caribbean or even Hawaii, which doesn't really fit it, but it's a great song, and it made me a fan of Spyro Gyra. Ironically, I think I only have one of their albums. I don't have a lot of their albums, but I have several of the singles. And I've always loved their music, and I continue to love it to this day. Number 25, Morning Dance, Spyro Gyra from 1979. Number 24, we're going way back to the 60s also. One of the premier songs ever done on, I believe it was a Hammond organ. It may not have been a Hammond. There was a type of organ that had a very high-pitched kind of reverb to it. Later, synthesizers would take that over in the late 60s. But back when this song came out, it wasn't a synthesizer. It was one of these organs. I can't remember the name of them. I know that a lot of rock bands use them. And it was an incredible song, and it was celebrating our first satellite in space. Number 24, Telstar by the Tornadoes. I've heard some remakes of that too that have been excellent. Really great song, and a really great way to celebrate. Telstar, I believe, was launched in 1962 or 63, I forget which. And it was to celebrate our matching the Russians with Sputnik, because of course the Cold War and all that stuff, we had to have something to show up everybody else. Hey, Sputnik never got a great song. Number 24, Telstar by the Tornadoes. Great song. Number 23, this might be the oddball in the lot, because it's even odder than Dueling Banjos, but it was a massive hit. AC, pop, all over, because the movie it was used in was a hit, and the music was a hit. I actually know how to play this song on the piano, which is one of those few songs I actually learned all the way through. Although, in all fairness, I only know the upper part. I don't know the bass part. But I loved the song, and I always did. And it was interesting to see Ragtime do so well in 1973. Number 23, The Entertainer, from the movie The Sting by Marvin Hamlish. I'm not sure if The Entertainer was actually one of the pieces that he did for the movie that was actually written by Scott Joplin. I do believe it was. It brought Scott Joplin back into the forefront. You know, people had forgotten about him for the longest time. And now, Ragtime is like standard, and you hear it all the time on different things. And it's because The Entertainer brought it back to the consciousness of the musical consciousness of America. It was a great song, and always will be. And it fit the movie. I mean, I've never seen the movie all the way through. That's one of the few classics I've not seen. Kim watched it recently, really enjoyed it. But I mean, Newman and Redford, you're not going to get any better than that. Number 23, The Entertainer from The Sting by Marvin Hamlish. Number 22, again going back to the 50s, and this might be, I think this is actually the oldest song on the chart, because I believe it's a hit in 1958. I might be wrong about the year. But I always loved this. We had a full-service radio station when I was growing up in the Spokane area. It was called KHQ AM. Until they went 24 hours in 1979. They used to go off the air at 10 o'clock every night, and they would run. They had news, they had sports, they did classical music every night from 8 to 10. It was a very full-service station. This was one of those songs that they played constantly. And as a result, I mean, they would play the current day, middle of the road stuff. We're talking 1976, 77 here. So you'd hear, you know, You Are the Woman by Firefall or Fernando by ABBA. And you would also hear all this stuff from the 50s and 60s. They wore out Laurie London. He's got the whole world in his hands, which they played at least 10 times a week. They never stopped playing that song. This was another one. The difference is this one always stuck in my psyche, and I always loved it as an instrumental. Number 22, The Happy Organ by Dave Baby Cortez. It's another one you've probably heard if you've watched any sports show on TV. They've used it as background music. Even now they use it occasionally. Great song. And it's very happy. It's very upbeat and peppy, and you get a very wonderful little lilt from it. Go listen to the playlist. If you don't know it, you will know it. Number 22, The Happy Organ, Dave Baby Cortez. I don't know where that nickname came from. Number 21, another one from a film that was iconic, and one of at least 5 of these songs that actually hit the top of the chart on both the pop chart and the AC chart. Oh, actually, I don't know if it hit number 1 on the AC chart or not. It hit number 1 on the pop chart. And that was a rarity in the 80s. You didn't see very many. Since 1980, there have been very few instrumental hits on the pop chart. This was one of them, and it deserved to be. Axel F. by Harold Faltermeyer from the movie Beverly Hills Cop. It was catchy. It was exciting. It reminded people of Eddie Murphy's antics in the film. I was never a big fan of the film. I saw it at the theater opening day, and I was just like, haven't seen any of the sequels. It was good. Wasn't great. But the music was fantastic. The soundtrack was awesome. And the Axel F. in particular. Loved instrumental stuff. Was very glad to see it hit the chart. And even more glad to see it hit the top spot on Billboard's Hot 100. Number 21, Axel F., Harold Faltermeyer. Great song. Moving into the 20th spot, comeback hit for this man. He had been one of the biggest icons of the 60s and early 70s, and then he took time off, and then he disappeared from the pop chart. He was still active, very active on the AC chart. But, and you got to remember, I brought this distinction up before on Obscuria and on my Off the Charts show a year or so ago. The Billboard Adult Contemporary chart started as the Billboard Easy Listening chart. It was called the Easy Listening chart until February of 1979 when they changed the name to Adult Contemporary. It became Adult Songs in 2004, I believe. But it's all the same kind of stuff. It's pop with a lighter bend. And this guy has always been huge on that chart. But he disappeared from the pop charts for about 7 or 8 years. And then this song was played in the daytime drama General Hospital, and it exploded. Number 20, Rise by Herb Alpert. I grew up with Herb Alpert as the leader of the Tijuana Brass. My mom loved him. And Rise was spectacular. Now, I, of course, was not watching General Hospital at the time. But I guess they had a disco, and it was used in a very controversial rape scene between Luke and Laura. This is, America's favorite sexual predator, as a couple of my friends used to call him. And they, of course, ended up, he ended up the hero of the show eventually. Rise is a great song. It was a disco smash. It hit number 3, I think, on the dance chart. It was a hit on the AC chart, a major hit on the pop chart. It took him back to the number 1 spot for the first time since This Girl's in Love with You in 1968, which was a vocal, the only vocal Herb Alpert ever hit with. It's pulsing, driving beat. Now I could make this whole list of Herb Alpert. I've done him on influencers. I love the man. I love his stuff in the 80s. None of it was really big pop chart hits. And not as much as I love Garden Party, Route 101, some of those. There are songs I like better. I mean, I love those. I've Garden Party's on my regular playlist. I love that song. But it doesn't hit here for some reason. Mainly because I thought I was having too much Herb Alpert, because there's 2 more to come from him. Number 20, Rise, Herb Alpert. Number 19, I was amazed that this hit number one, even first of all, on the pop chart. I mean, I know it was 1962, but it just didn't seem to me like the kind of song that would be a number 1. Not only was it a number 1 hit, it was the number 1 song of the year. And I'm like, okay, that's a great song, but I've got other instrumentals I like better. But it was also the kind of song that gets under your skin once you hear it, and it doesn't go away. It's just that wonderful melody. Number 19, Stranger on the Shore from Mr. Acker Bilk. Again, saxophone. I'm a sucker for saxophone. Actually, I don't think he is a saxophone. He may be a clarinet, if I'm not mistaken. Let me. I always associated it with the saxophone, I think, because I've heard it on saxophone, and it's well done. But I think the original version, and I'm going to look that up right now, was done by, yeah, it was a clarinet on the original. So it was a clarinet. That's the first time I think ever a clarinet had the number one song of the year. The only other clarinetist I've ever known really well was Pete Fountain, because my mom was a huge fan. But that song is great, and I mean, it's just, it had that wonderful and it's very likable, and it puts a smile on your face. I still can't believe it was the pop song number one song of the year, but that's just me. Number 19, Stranger on the Shore, Mr. Ackerbilk. Number 18, you can see number 18 performed nearly every week over at Cajun Roots Resellers Wednesday Hump Day auction, because Don and Mary almost always have a 45 copy of it in one of their 45 sales. And they love performing it, even though it's an instrumental, because it's kind of a sing-along over there when they do those for all their hosts. But they really get into this, and it's always fun to watch them. And it was, again, a number one hit in 1976. Number 18, A Fifth of Beethoven, Walter Murphy and the Big Apple Band. Love this treatment of this song. Again, it's Beethoven's Fifth with a disco beat, and it's really excellent. Walter Murphy has always done some great stuff. I have a couple albums by him, and a lot of people don't realize he actually writes his own stuff as well as doing covers of classical music. But he's a great artist and a great arranger, and this particular version was phenomenally good. I've loved it since it was out. Number 18, A Fifth of Beethoven by Walter Murphy and the Big Apple Band. Number 17, I learned how to play this too on the upper part of the on the piano. It's a great song from one of the most boring movies I've ever seen in my life. I'm like, I can't stand this film. I sat through it 25 years ago. No, it was earlier than that, 35 years ago, when it was on cable. I sat through this movie. Oh my God, talk about a major snooze fest. I know there's some interesting and exciting things that happen in it, but they're so few and far between that, on the original OG single, the title of the movie is nowhere to be found. The song is simply called Titles. It's more commonly known as by the name that was later added on the subsequent pressings of the single when it took off. Number 17, Chariots of Fire by Vangelis. Love this song. Marvelous song. I mean, how this movie won, well, actually, it's Hollywood. It's expected that this movie would win Best Picture. Yawn. I don't know. I'm sorry. I just can't get into that film. Love the music, and I've been a Vangelis fan ever since. So sorry we lost him during the pandemic, and he was an amazing, amazing keyboard player. Number 17, Chariots of Fire, Titles by Vangelis. Number 16, from the man that ultimately is the Rodney Dangerfield of music, gets no respect whatsoever. Laugh if you want, but when you had, in 1988 or 89, when you had the top 40 dominated by Tiffany, Debbie Gibson, New Kids on the Block, and other teen pop acts, and suddenly this dude with the soprano saxophone waltzes into the top 5, that's no easy feat. Number 16, Songbird by Kenny G. As a result of Songbird, I have become a lifelong Kenny G fan. I went back and purchased all 4 of his earlier albums, Duotones, which that album came from, and 3 other ones, one of which I showcased on a recent Vinyl Recall. Vinyl Recall. I adore Kenny G. I don't care, people make fun of him because he plays, the modern equivalent of elevator music, but I love the guy. I always have. Never seen him in concert. His live album is phenomenally good if you've not heard it. And really, the song is just mesmerizing, especially in an era. Here it is, a slow, elegant soprano saxophone instrumental among all these You Got It the Right Stuff and Only in My Dreams, and I Think We're Alone Now, and this is making it into the top 5. That took a lot, and that's why it worked. It's the same thing that's going to be another similar situation in a few minutes. At number 16, sorry, Songbird by Kenny G. Halfway up the chart at number 15, we're going to find the newest instrumental on this list, and the first and only instrumental hit of the 1990s, if I'm not mistaken. Kenny G had a few minor hits, but other than Kenny G, not that many got through. This guy did, with a driving dance beat that is phenomenal. Sadly, I could not use it for Obscuria. It was blocked. I was able to, it would play in few countries, but it was blocked in almost the whole world. And I've always loved it, and I wanted to use it on my instrumentals week a few weeks ago, and I couldn't do it. So I really missed that, but it's a great song. Children by Robert Miles. It's another song that you hear in the background, especially in the 90s and early 2000s. You'd hear it used on sports programming, on news programs, on stuff like Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. It was great background music. Robert Miles' whole album, Dreamland, is phenomenally good. He's another one we lost way too young. I think he was 43 when he passed away. Amazing mind. He had the skills of a musician and the mind of a DJ, and he combined the two into some amazing music. And if you've not heard the full album or any of his stuff, you should go over to one of the streaming services and check him out, because his stuff is just fantastic. I particularly like his song Princess of Light, which is a fantastic number. Number 15, Robert Miles and Children. Number 14, amazingly, is the only TV theme that made the list. There is another song associated with a television show, but it's not a theme. Not in that way. This was on every week for 12 years in the 60s and 70s, and then again on every week for 10 years in the 2000s and 2010s. I always liked the original version. I didn't mind the version they did for the new revival of the show. I did really hate the new revival of the show, because I want my Steve McGarrett tough as nails, not metrosexual. Number 14, Hawaii Five-0 by the Ventures. Great job with this song. I actually bought the original score album from the series, which was released in 1968. It was I paid $20 some for that album, and it's fabulous. It's from the first 2 or 3 episodes of the show. And great music, great incidental music, and fantastically done. But the Ventures turned it into a major pop hit, and deservedly so. It's always been a great song for, especially, I don't know how many of you guys do guitarists on YouTube, but E-Rock does a great version. So does the gentleman, Connor Engstrom also does a great version. Heavy metal versions that are just stellar. Number 14, Hawaii Five-0 by the Ventures. Number 13, this guy was a very eccentric gentleman. He never ever really had a major deal, but he knew a lot of people in the music industry, and he was known for his musical work. I mean, he was a professor of music in places. And every now and then he would go and record a couple of songs and tell his buddies, oh, hey, I just recorded something new. And they'd be like, okay, we'll put it out on a 45. And they did. The song at number 13 became a major AC hit. It peaked at number 88, I think, on the pop chart, but it was a top 5, top 10 AC hit in 1974. And again, inspired by the ragtime craze that was going on thanks to the Sting. Great music, great song. Number 13, Georgia Porcupine by George Fischoff. I have always loved that song. I featured it on Obscuria during Instrumental Week last year. Great stuff. Fischoff was definitely an eccentric dude. I would have loved to talk to him. For everything I've read about him, sounds like he would have been a fascinating person to talk to. Loved Georgia Porcupine. It's the only song I really know by him. He had a couple of other minor hits over the years, but this one takes the cake for me. I love this song. Number 13, Georgia Porcupine, and by George Fischoff. Number 12 is really only one of 2 songs that could be considered disco on this list. Rise, I suppose, could be also, so that's three. Um, it was done, deliberately done, as a disco song. The man who did it was a musician, but he was also an arranger, a producer. Um, he did all kinds of amazing work behind the scenes, and not enough people appreciate him. I happen to have most of his albums. He is a longtime hero of mine for this particular song, and I can't get enough of him musically. I've featured him on a couple vinyl recalls recently. I featured him on Influencers last year. He was just a musical genius when it came to arranging, producing, and conceiving disco versions or dance versions of stuff that didn't start that way. And he did a great job with his first single, which hit number one on the Billboard chart and made him a household name. Number 12, Star Wars Cantina Band by Miko. Miko Minardo, the producer behind that, and I don't believe he actually did play any of the music on that. He was a producer and arranger, but he did play trombone, and he played it on all of his albums, so it may be somewhere in that song. It takes the main theme from Star Wars, meshes it with the Cantina Band music from that movie, and changed my life. That album, Star Wars and Other Galactic Funk, saved my life in high school. People can poo-poo it all they want to. I know it's one of the most hated albums in the VC. Um, I beg to differ. That's all I'll say. Number 12, Star Wars Cantina Band by Miko. Number 11, I actually like two different versions of the same song by the same guy. I'll tell you about both of them. Number 11 is A Taste of Honey. The original version by Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass hit in 1963, I believe. And it's another one of those songs you've heard on sports shows and news shows and everything else, and well-known things. In 2018, Herb went back in the studio. He's been doing some. He has his own label, Herb Alpert Presents, now, and he does some great stuff there. One of the things he released was an album called Herb Alpert Reimagines the Tijuana Brass. What he basically did was took all the brass's hits, put them through the remix machine, and came out with some real gems. I love what he did to A Taste of Honey on that album, and the song is just great anyway. I remember hearing it wafting through our house when I was a kid. My mom always had the radio on, and Herb Alpert was always on the radio where she listened, and that's how I became a big fan. Number 11, A Taste of Honey by Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. Top 10 territory now. Number 10, the other disco song on the chart. Even though at the time it hit number one on Billboard's Hot 100, it hadn't yet taken off. Disco, it's not considered disco, even though it was very much a disco song. It's got the waka waka beat behind it and everything. But Billboard, for some reason, the first official disco song to hit number one is considered to be Rock the Boat by the Hughes Corporation, and followed in close succession by Rock Your Baby by George McRae. This song doesn't get consideration, and it should, because it was the first song with a really disco beat that I ever really got into. And I mean, it happened almost a year before those other songs. I remember it being on the radio all the time when I was in 4th and 5th grade. Fantastic song. It's so much so that it was used as the theme song for the first season of Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous before they came up with their own theme. And it's just a great song all the way around. Love Unlimited Orchestra, conducted by Barry White, and Love's Theme, number 10. I actually just did get, if I can grasp it here, the 20th Century Singles, 1972 to 1979, by Barry and the Unlimited Orchestra. This album is phenomenal. If you like them, if you like the disco instrumentals, this thing is freaking awesome. Awesome. Love's Theme is the very first song on it. Barry was genius when it came to arranging. Like Miko, he did some incredible stuff. He also conducted the orchestra. Barry White saw music in a different way than anybody else. He could do the stuff he became popular for as a vocalist. You know, You're the First, the Last, My Everything. He did what was basically for the 70s down and dirty sex music, and it was great. But he also had a tender side, and Love's Theme is perfect for that. It's a great song, and I will always love it. Number 10, Love's Theme by Love Unlimited Orchestra, conducted by Barry White. Number 9, this was the first hit of its kind. There were two seminal synthesizer songs in the 1970s. The second one, which I recently talked about on a vinyl recall, was the birth of EDM. That was Donna Summer's I Feel Love, which had to be programmed in such a weird way. There's some great videos on YouTube about it. That was the second benchmark. The first one came in 1972 with the first synthesized instrumental to hit the top 10, Popcorn by Hot Butter. There are some incredible and some incredibly bad remakes of Popcorn out there. They actually added vocals to it in the European countries in the 70s, which I don't know why they felt the need to do that. But Popcorn is instantly recognizable. Boop, 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 boop. And yet there's versions, I've heard versions on guitar, keyboard, piano, saxophone, even more like a synthesizer orchestra. It's an amazing song. It's a simple song, fairly simple, and it's not the original version of the song. And my pal Steve over at Value Vinyl did a great deep dive on Popcorn about a year and a half ago. If I think of it, I'll put a link to it because it's really worth watching and seeing the evolution of the song. Great song all the way around. Number 9, Popcorn by Hot Butter. Number 8. Again, this is a song I remember from my childhood. And if I was wrong about the Happy Organ, this is the oldest song. It's from 1960. And it was the number 1 song of the year, 1960. It was number 1 for 9 weeks or 10 weeks. I think it was 10 weeks because Physical tied it, and You Let My Life. Actually, I think they both beat it. I think it was 9 weeks because the one that they didn't beat was Cherry Pink and Apple Blossom White, which was also number 1 during the rock era. So, this song was up there. In 1976, he did a disco remake, the same conductor, did a disco remake that charted briefly, and it's really well done too. It's just a great song. Theme from a Summer Place by Percy Faith and his orchestra. Kim actually sat through the movie a few months ago. She wasn't impressed. It's from the film A Summer Place, which I believe starred Sandra Dee, maybe? I don't remember. The disco remake was great. Percy passed away shortly after its release. It was still on the charts when he passed away. Great song. Always remembered it from Beautiful Music Radio. Always on the chart. Always on popular radio. Because the movie was so popular. Great song all the way around. There's a vocal. It has vocals. There are lyrics to it. The vocal version was a hit by the Letterman, I believe. I might be wrong. Don't quote me on that. Number 8, A Summer Place, and Summer Place 76, as the disco version is known, by Percy Faith and his orchestra. Just featured this a couple weeks ago on Obscuria. My wife loves this song. It was a huge hit when it came out in 73, and then it just kind of slowly disappeared by the end of the 70s. And then you'd hear it every now and then, maybe, and then it was featured in Boogie Nights, and it's been around ever since. Joy by Apollo 100. Incredible organ and guitar rock version of Joy, Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring. I think that's a Bach number, I'm not sure. Classical fanatics, let me know, because I don't remember. I love that song from the time I was a little kid. I still love it today. Still play it all the time. Excuse me. Kim says she would give, if she had to pick 3 things she would show aliens visiting Earth to find out what we're like, she would play this song for them. She likes it that much. Number 7, Joy by Apollo 100. Number 6 is one of those songs, the one like I mentioned, Songbird by Kenny G. This is the other one. In the midst of disco everywhere. I mean, disco was everywhere. The Bee Gees were dominating the charts in early 1979. There was all the stuff from Saturday Night Fever and their follow-up, Spirits Having Flown, everything they were producing, all these other big acts. And this Canadian piano player suddenly pushed his way into the American psyche, and you can't get away from it. It's a song that everybody knows. Again, news programming, sports programming, everybody used it, and it hit it was actually a bigger hit on the pop chart. It hit number 3 than it was on the AC chart, where it peaked at number 4. Number 6, Music Box Dancer by Frank Mills. I have always loved that song, and it was a great release. I mean, it was really fun to be listening to KJRB in Spokane at the time where I lived out there, and they would play, the latest disco song, latest Bee Gees, and they'd throw Frank Mills in the middle of it. It was a big hit. Again, it was people looking for an alternative, just like Songbird had been during the teen pop era of the 80s. And it's a great song. And ironically, it was a 5-year-old song. It was actually originally recorded in 1974, and it was originally the flip side of the single it was on. The Poet and I was originally designated the A side in Canada when it came out, and then a programmer got a copy by accident, flipped it over, loved the flip side, and started playing it on one of the Canadian radio stations, and voila, the rest is history. Number 6, Music Box Dancer by Frank Mills. Number 5 is the other one I just said was associated with television. And I bet a lot of people don't realize this was actually a chart hit. It hit number 37 on the Hot 100. But it was, I never really thought of it as a chart hit. I think of it as, Peanuts music. Everybody thinks of it as the Peanuts music. Number 5, Linus and Lucy by Vince Guaraldi. The Vince Guaraldi Trio, more specifically. Everybody knows Linus and Lucy. Da 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 da. You hear it. They used it in commercials every time the Peanuts characters would be in them, from Dolly Madison to as recently as the MetLife commercials. They had the Peanuts commercials characters in. It's used in the opening of It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, which is where it's best known from, and the Schroeder's dance music during the Christmas show. Linus and Lucy is a great song. I've heard so many different versions of this song over the years. David Benoit did a terrific job with it on the Happy Anniversary Charlie Brown album that came out in, I believe it was 1995, somewhere around there, or 1990. It was celebrating either the 25th or the 30th anniversary of a Charlie Brown Christmas. And it was stupendously good. And they got the kids who were doing the voices then from the TV specials to do the voices for the song. It was awesome. Hit number 1 on the Kirkham Report chart. Terrific thing. Vince Guaraldi's original it just can't be beat. It's freaking phenomenal. Number 5, Linus and Lucy, Vince Guaraldi Trio, and the David Benoit version is also excellent. Number 4, I talked about this week on my show and on Vinyl Recall about how my chart started in 1978. My first chart started in 1978, my weekly chart. But the very first chart I ever made up was the top 30 songs of 1976. I did it by my chart value. And this song was number 1 because I just loved it and played it constantly. This song has vocals in it at the back end, but it is considered primarily an instrumental, and that's why it's here. Number 4, Gonna Fly Now, theme from Rocky by Bill Conti. Released from the soundtrack of Rocky, it hit number 1 on the pop chart, number 1 on the AC chart. It was a monster hit all the way across the board, and it deserved to be. I mean, it's one of these songs that just puts you in a mind of, yeah, I can do anything. which is what it motivates Rocky in the movie. Um, Bill Conti's also done some great stuff with television work. He did a single version of the theme from Dynasty that was a dance version, and the theme from Falcon Crest on a single in the 1980s. And I still think Falcon Crest was better than Dynasty, even though Dynasty was a top 40 hit. Um, Falcon Crest was the flip side, and I liked the way he did it better. Um, but Gonna Fly Now is a classic. Maynard Ferguson also had a hit with it, a minor hit with it on the pop chart. It peaked at number 30 something. Again, another trumpeter. Um, it's forever associated with movies, forever associated with positivity in movies, and that's a good thing. Number 3, Bill Conti and the theme from Rocky, Gonna Fly Now. Number 4, sorry. Number 3, my last Herb Alpert one. This one is a happy memory for me because there was this restaurant we used to go to when I was a kid. My mom and I lived in a teeny tiny town south of Spokane called Waverly. At the time, they had the smallest population in the state at 79 people. Um, Later, it would grow into the 100s. And it was about 40 minutes south of Spokane, and we would drive into Spokane a couple times a month to go shopping and stuff. This is when, after my father had been out of the picture, but before she and my stepfather hooked up. And we would go to, and sometimes I think it was actually while mom and dad were still married. We would go to Spokane, or actually the western suburbs of Spokane, Dishman, Opportunity, Spokane Falls, or Spokane Valley, excuse me. There was a little Chinese restaurant that we stopped at every time. This is how I got my love for Chinese food. I can't remember. I want to say it was called the Shangri-La, but I'm not sure. Um, and they had the best Chinese food I've ever eaten. One of the best I've ever eaten. And they had, Alone Anywhere, a Scopiotone jukebox. Now, this is the kind of jukebox where they played music videos. If you go online, there's a couple of sites that deal with Scopiotone, and one other company did them, and they've got a lot of those old videos online. Um, they first came out in early 60s. At this time, we're talking probably 66, 67. They still had never spread that well. But every time we went in there, you got 2 songs for a quarter, and I always played Tijuana Taxi. I love the video, I love the music, and Tijuana Taxi is my number 3 song. Um, you know, toot, toot, got that whole horn and everything in it. Um, Tijuana Taxi is my favorite Herb Alpert song of all time because of that. I have that wonderful memory, and it's so much fun to think about. And seriously, if you've never seen the Scopatone videos, or you want to know more about the whole process, because they were there 30 years before 20 years before MTV, it's a fascinating thing, and Tijuana Taxi's part of it. How can it be bad? Number 3, Tijuana Taxi, Herb Alpert, and the Tijuana Brass. Number 2, by this much. I think I only downgraded it to number 2 because I know that the gentleman who recorded it did not approve the single release. I love the single release. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the entire concept album, but I didn't hear that until I was in my 20s. At the time the single came out, I just loved the music, and I knew it would drive my mother crazy because of what movie it came from. But I've never stopped liking the song. It's another one I have a number of remixes by that is really terrific. I don't know if he's approved of any of them, but this song was great, and I'm talking about the single version here. Number 2, Tubular Bells by Mike Oldfield. Mike is a genius. He always was, and I just... The whole Tubular Bells album is phenomenal. I mean, I've watched the live performance of it so many times on YouTube when they did it for, I forget which British show on the BBC they did it for, but they did the entire first side of the album live, and it was amazing. I never had the full album until I got a CD player. I only have it on CD. I have the orchestral Tubular Bells on vinyl now. I picked it up a few months ago. Um, the song is phenomenal. And it came from The Exorcist, which was a bonus button for my mom, who absolutely would freak out. That's that movie. That's that music from that devil movie, isn't it? I'm like, yeah, isn't it great? It's awesome. I always love the song, and I just think it's amazingly creative, especially when you hear the entire piece. But even the single edited version, that Virgin America, the only thing I remember being released on Virgin America until the 80s, um, did for American release, Mike Oldfield did not approve of, did not do it himself. He was unhappy with the edit. Um, I still thought it was great, and I still do. Number two, Tubular Bells by Mike Oldfield, the version from The Exorcist. Number one is going to take a little talking about. I have no doubt this song is number one on my instrumentals list simply because I have more different versions of this song than practically anything in my collection. In addition to the original, which I remember fondly as a child, I was 4 or 5 when it came out. Um, 5, because it was 1968. It is also in my top 10 songs of all time, not just instrumentals, but songs. Because, number one, it is an amazing melodic song. It is incredibly put together. And it is just genuinely, there's nothing quite like it out there anywhere else. There are tons of remakes of it. I have it by Glenn Campbell. I have it by Vanessa Mae. I have it by Synergy. I have it, the later version he did with Mannheim Steamroller. And about 24 other versions of this song. I love this song. I will always love this song. I will always especially love the original of this song from 1968, my number one pop instrumental of all time, Classical Gas by Mason Williams. This song is just, it puts a smile on my face no matter when I listen to it. I could be in the deepest, darkest, depressed area, and by the end of it, I would at least feel better for a few minutes. I don't know what it is. I don't really remember Mason being a part of the Smothers Brothers comedy show, which he was a musician and writer on. My mom watched it every week, but I didn't really pay attention to it. But I remember him playing that song. And I was like, that's the song on the radio. Yeah. There's something magical about Classical Gas for me. It is always going to be one of my favorites. And I had kind of let it slip until 1985 or 86 when the album he did with Mannheim Steamroller came out. Reimagined. I mean, it took the original and made it even better. And that is what made me a die-hard fan of Mannheim Steamroller. I was just getting into New Age at the time. And I could listen to this song 100 times a day and never get sick of it. I don't know if I would probably get sick of it if it was on permanent repeat. That would kind of make me crazy, but I could, I mean, there is no bad version of this song that I can remember. Everybody has done this song, has done it well. I've never found a true heavy metal version of it, which I'd like to do. Or at least an electric guitar version, which I've been happy with. I like Chet Atkins' cover, but it's a very countrified version. I'd like a rock guitar version. But I haven't found one I really like yet. But I do adore this song, and I always will. My number one pop instrumental of all time, Mason Williams and Classical Gas. There are so many songs that didn't make this list. I could have done a whole top 100 and it still would have killed me. Theme from SWAT is not here. Big hit. Love that song, but it wasn't not as much as these. You know, I could go on and never made the top 30 list type of thing like Red Buttons used to do on the Dean Martin roasts. Instrumentals are a part of my life that I love. I have a lot of this beautiful music. In fact, Dawn just sent me a Mystic Moods Orchestra album. I can't wait to listen to. I love them. Um, these pop sounds prove that instrumentals can be a pop crossover. I mean, there were a number of big hits in the 50s I left off. I left off Theme from the Third Man by Anton Karas. I left off Calcutta by Lawrence Welk. I left off Moonglow and Theme from Picnic by Morris. I've forgotten his last name. All of those great big hits too, and all of them deserving to be on this list. But there was only 30 slots. Um, I hope you enjoyed this. I'd love to know what your favorite instrumental songs are, so please leave me a comment. And don't forget to check the show notes. I will have playlists of all of these. I'm going to put together playlists for YouTube and for Spotify for these songs, and some of the alternate versions. I want you to hear, there'll probably be several versions of Classical Gas for you to check out, and a lot of other stuff, and I hope that you enjoyed it. That's another Rank This for this week, and I hope you've enjoyed that as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so. If you have already, thank you. I would appreciate if you'd share this show with other fellow YouTubers and fellow friends in the online community by hitting the share button and sending them a link. And I would also very much like your comment. I'd love you to tell me what your favorite pop instrumentals are. And I could go round and round. We could have all kinds of great discussions about that, because this is one of my true passions. I hope you'll continue to check out all the rest of my shows, weekdays at 4 o'clock, except Mondays, weekends and weekdays. So it's every day except Monday at 4 p.m. I usually have something up, or I'm supposed to have something up. Excuse me. I'm supposed to have something up, but I don't always take it. This week I am, because I'm off work. And don't forget Obscuria, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. And thank you for your patronage and for taking the time to watch this long-ass show. I really appreciate it. For Rank This, I'm TC Kirkham, the Kirkham Report. Thank you for watching. We'll see you soon. Ciao, baby.